While Rob is getting mic'd up, I'll introduce Rob Theriault. He is an immersive technology manager for Georgian College.
Front or back? Yep.
After introducing virtual reality into the Paramedic program and helping to create a VR hub in the library, Rob was asked to lead the exploration of integration of VR for Georgian College's 7 campuses. Rob has an undergraduate degree in paramedicine from Victoria University in Australia and a Master's of Educational Technology from the University of British Columbia. He is a published author, researcher, blogger, podcaster, and recipient of the Virtual World Society's Nextant Educator Prize as a global thought leader in the XR space. We are proud to welcome Rob Theriault from Georgian College. Thank you.
How does this thing work?
Next. You got talking to just through the speakers.
Okay. All right.
What is it? That's fine.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but this event's being live streamed. I don't know if you know the significance of this, but if I was part of your marketing team, I'd be on Twitter saying, we are live streaming the University of Michigan's XR Summit. Netflix, if you need help next year with the Love is Blind reunion, call us. No problem. I have a wife and a daughter, and so I'm peripheral casualty of these TV shows. Thanks, Jeremy, and this has been a great event so far. I think I have Jeremy and Pippa envy for all the incredible things you're doing. Now, I understand 3 years ago, you started like me. You were alone. You were a team of one.
Yep.
I was a team of one. I'm now a team of 3 and a half, sort of. And we don't have students who develop XR, although we are launching an XR program this fall, so I'm pretty excited about that. But we've taken a very different approach from most colleges and universities, and I'll just take you a little bit through some of our journey and some of the experiences that we've done and some use cases of exploring and integrating XR into curriculum. So we are just north of Toronto, about an hour and a half. We're a medium-sized college for Ontario, Canada. And when I did my master's, I developed an interest in VR, MR, and AR, and my first virtual reality experience was at a Paramedic Educator Conference in Washington, D.C., and there was a guy wearing a VR headset, and I could see what he was seeing on a big screen. And quite frankly, it wasn't really that impressive when I was seeing it on the big screen. But then I put the headset on and experienced what a lot of people experience their first time in VR, a real wow moment. I felt as though I was standing in the room with this guy who was struggling to breathe. Now, it was a different scenario. It was a guy sitting on the edge of his bed, and he was struggling to breathe. And I could hear him struggling to breathe. And I could see him struggling to breathe. And his lips were an off-color blue because of lack of oxygen. And when I asked him questions, he was only able to speak 5-6 words at a time between taking breaths. I could take a stethoscope and listen to his chest and identify abnormal lung sounds. I could look at his medications to determine what his medical history is based on those. I could take vital signs. I could reach down, feel a pulse, and it was a vibration of the controller, but good enough to create the illusion that I was checking a pulse, and I realized his heart rate was a little faster than it probably should be. And I could initiate treatments, and I could see responses to treatments. And at the end of that experience, I stepped out of VR, and for me personally, it was not dissimilar for having just gone to a movie that was very thought-provoking or finished reading a book that was deeply moving. I just needed some time alone to process what I experienced. And a few things struck me. The first thing was, I got the same little twinge of adrenaline I get when I see someone who's critically ill or injured as a paramedic, and thought, I need to assess this guy and treat him quickly before he deteriorates. I wasn't expecting that kind of feeling. The second thing that struck me was that, when I do case presentations in college, I use anesthetizing PowerPoint slides. And this is probably a little more engaging. And I thought, wow, if students could actually see what someone critically ill or injured looks like and sounds like in the kind of context that we work in, be it someone's house or the side of a road with traffic rushing by, or in a hospital, or in a workplace for someone in the trades, that would be very powerful. And so I realized, and I didn't know the terms at the time, or I didn't know them well, but I realized that my first experience was this feeling of presence. I was actually in another world. I look right, I look left, I look behind me, I look all around, I'm in this space. And that sense of presence was very powerful. The second thing was context, and context is even more valuable for things like language and art, museums, galleries, but very important for every other conceivable profession. And the third thing was agency, being able to do things with your hands. And it's not critically important that the haptics are not perfect, and haptics are going to continue to advance, but what was important was that you're able to do things in the sequence you want students to do them in. And that embodied cognition, that muscle memory that you acquire doing things with your hands is really valuable. And you don't get that in the early years of college or university. So where do you start? After that event, I went back to my college, and I started thinking about what VR applications would be really interesting to explore, to pilot. And I thought, every year we have this mock disaster where students learn how to do medical triage at a mass casualty incident. And it's a very labor-intensive process to organize this. We have to find students who will volunteer to be patients. We have to put makeup on them so they look injured. We have to find a place somewhere on the school property to host this event. We have to decide, is this a train crash, a plane crash? I'd say shooting, but shootings don't happen in Canada. Some people are laughing, some people are going, yeah, I'm moving to Canada, buddy. We'd love to have you. You're welcome. It takes months to organize this. We have to contact police, fire, and paramedic dispatch to let them know we're doing a mock disaster so they don't start sending ambulances every time someone sees someone lying on the grass and calls 911, because people rarely stop to check and ask. First, are you okay over there? They just call 911, a couple of miles away. And so we did mass casualty incident triage in VR in our paramedic lab. And then we hosted an event where we invited people from the college and from surrounding hospitals to see some VR demos for anatomy and mass casualty incident triage and a couple of other things. And that got the attention of our senior leadership team, and the president and vice president academic invited me down to the office to ask me where I thought virtual, mixed, and augmented reality was going. And so I told them, and to my surprise, a week later they said, we think we're going to create, well, they didn't say we think, they said we're going to create this position, and we'd like you to apply for it to start exploring virtual, mixed, and augmented reality. And the approach we've taken is very different from most other schools. So I really felt it was important to get virtual reality, in particular VR, in the hands of as many teachers and students as possible. I wanted them to experience VR to get a sense of, is this good pedagogy? Is it truly experiential learning? Is it, start looking at some lit searches on it, et cetera. And so my approach was to speak with faculty who I knew to be early adopters and innovators. Once I found a fairly compelling XR experience, let them try it, have a conversation around it, look at the cost, look at how we would do a pilot, and then I would go to the associate dean and the dean, and we'd have some further conversations about funding for the pilot, et cetera. But I felt it was important to talk with the faculty first, because if you're how many of you are teachers here, university or college? Okay, a few of you. Innovation happens at the faculty level, and let me go back here for a second. Yeah, so innovation happens at the faculty level. The other thing that we think about when we're looking at piloting XR is, of course, does it provide learning that would otherwise, in the words of Jeremy Bailenson, be dangerous, impossible, counterproductive, or expensive. You can add difficult, impractical, inappropriate to that. When I say inappropriate, don't let your mind go to the gutter. I mean things like taking police students to a crime scene or paramedics to a car crash scene. That wouldn't be appropriate, but you can do it in virtual reality. So, about 2 months after I started into this position, I discovered to my surprise that a guy by the name of Costin Bianchi from our architectural technology program had been using virtual reality since 2018. And so his students design buildings in 2D, and then they go into 3D to get a 2-scale perspective on what they've designed. And the 3D perspective is very powerful, because in 3D you suddenly realize, you know what, this ceiling should be elevated 2 feet. And this hallway is ridiculously wide. And this spiral staircase just doesn't look right here. How can we move it, or where can we move it where it doesn't affect the structural integrity of the building? I attended this event in virtual reality. I've attended a lot of events in virtual reality, and I've actually met some of you people here in avatar form. So, I'm seeing your real selves for the first time. And at this event, it was an event hosted by an architectural firm, and they described how they were using virtual and augmented reality, and they were contracted to design a children's hospital. And they shrunk their avatars down to the size of a 5-year-old to look at the design from a 5-year-old's perspective. And that just blew me away. That's just not something you can do in the real world, right? So pretty incredible. So they've been using it since 2018 and continue to use it. And that kind of sustainability with XR requires a champion, maybe 2 champions, maybe 3 champions. What's a champion? A champion is someone who walks the fine line between keener and wiener and doesn't get paid for doing what they do. Now, if you want to be serious about XR at college or university, you need to compensate the keeners and the wieners, and give them some course downloads, give them the freedom to be able to do what they need to do. The first pilot that we did, see if I can get to advance this, was with our Indigenous Studies program. I attended this other event in virtual reality. I think Jeremy and I met in virtual reality, right? We met in AltSpace. Yeah. I have gray hair as my avatar, and kids would come up to me and say, "Hey, old man, what are you doing here?" It's like, man, ageism, it's cruel. So Jeremy and I met in VR. I think we met at your digital twin, maybe, or maybe before that. Maybe. Anyway, I'm very envious of your digital twin here. It's beautiful. It's incredible. I attended this other event, which was a conversational French in a cafe, and it was in a cafe. And I'm not a language teacher, but I thought, that makes sense, right? It's contextual. And people were picking up cups of coffee, and they were ordering their drinks in French, or trying to order their drinks in French, and they were, they were ordering their snacks in French, and I thought, wow, this makes so much sense. So I approached our Indigenous faculty. I approached a lady by the name of Michelle O'Brien, who coordinates the Indigenous Studies program, and asked her, what do you think about, this was in early 2020, what do you think of the idea of maybe supplementing your language program with virtual reality to give some context to learning? And she was a little skeptical, but she said something to me that I really respected and admired. She said, but you know what, Rob, it's not about me, it's about the students. And so she agreed to try it. So I built a house for them. That sounds so amazing, eh? I built a house using a template in AltSpace VR, and I furnished the house, and I labeled everything in and outside the house with the Anishinaabe, Moin, and English words that they provided for me. The students started meeting there every Thursday with their teacher, and because their first course was language in the home, they have 3 other courses, one each semester: language in the community, language in the workplace, and language in the natural environment. And the students loved it. There was one student who didn't tolerate VR because on social VR platforms, when your body is still and your avatar is moving, that gives some people motion sickness. So they accessed it via PC. And they loved it so much, they decided to integrate it into curriculum. And so we contracted a company to build some other worlds for the other subjects, and they've been using it now. They used it throughout the pandemic. We gave students headsets on loan. And by the way, my XR support development specialist, Victor Skarsky, is here today. And if you want to know how to deploy VR headsets on a large scale, we consult. We're really cheap. It's buy us a beer if we're in town or you're in town. And just one though. Because, yeah. And so the students took it away, and in some cases, students take away the headsets for a full semester or a year. We get them back, we factory reset them, and we redeploy them. So we built these other worlds, and let's see if I can advance this here. So this was the newer version of language in the home, and you can see there's a medicine wheel there, and this beautiful backyard, and a lake. And you can go in the house, and there are audio files in there where you click on the audio files, and only the person who clicks on the audio files hears the audio files, so no one else. And you can hear the pronunciation of the Anishinaabe word. And the second world we built, we'll come to that. Let me switch over right now. Let me see. There we go. Was for language in the community. So we had this town built, and we have, Indigenous Studies has an elder by the name of Ernestine Baldwin. She is what they call the knowledge keeper, the Nokomis, the grandmother for the community. And she used to come into the college once a month and do prayer and talk stories in Anishinaabe. And she went from visiting the college once a month to going into virtual reality every week and talking with the students sort of after class and having conversations with them. And they were so inspired by her commitment to it that they named the school in the town after her. Now, she was 80 years old when she first started going into virtual reality. She'd never used a computer before. She embraced it right away. And she said, what about those goggle things you put on your head? Can I try those? And we said, sure. So we gave her headsets. She now has avatars on 3 different platforms. She still meets with them once a week. They are about to receive a global prize from the World Congress a week from now in Montreal. So I'm really thrilled about the work they've done. They're just so committed to this experience. And they do a lot of fun things in these towns, like they have scavenger hunts and do some crazy things. But this is a testament of how valuable context is. And again, I don't teach these subject areas, but I think about context for art. And we have a museum and galleries course. And history, just incredible. We're doing a 2-year research study now on the efficacy of virtual reality anatomy. I think this would be particularly valuable for online anatomy. Now, this might not be, a second-year university level course, but first year college, for sure, you could teach anatomy online. And anatomy is usually coupled with physiology, and we're currently working using some grant money with St. Cloud State University to develop a series of physiology apps that'll become open source. And I would encourage schools, if you've got XR students and you're developing experiences, particularly skills, to consider making those open source because XR is expensive. Our advanced care paramedic program did a pilot with a VR application called Health Scholars. And this one is interesting. It uses voice recognition and artificial intelligence. And I think I just got louder coming to this side of the room. Did you notice that? Oh, that's what it is. Okay, that makes sense. It's like spatial audio in VR. It's incredible. So this one uses AI and voice recognition where the student, there's, guy collapsed on the ground. There's a team of paramedics. They each have name tags. And the student basically tells the avatars what to do. So the student will say, Aaron, can you check for a pulse? Phil, can you start chest compressions? Fatima, can you defibrillate and start an intravenous line? Ross, can you give some epinephrine? And it also tests the student's situational awareness. So for example, the person doing chest compressions gets tired and slows down. And the student has to notice this and prompt them to speed up or swap someone else in who's not tired. And the analytics provides a full description of everything that was done, the sequence in which it was done, did they get the right drug at the right dose at the right time, the right route, etc. And that makes marking so much easier if the teacher has analytics upon which to do either formative or summative assessments. In nursing, we did a pilot with CIMEX. Some of you may be familiar with CIMEX, and they're here tomorrow. And there's some big companies in the medical and nursing simulation area, CIMEX, Oxford Medical Simulation, UBSim, etc. And there are pros and cons to all of them. But they were using CIMEX, and the students loved it because they felt they were in a hospital room where they were used to being in a lab at the college and seeing the same mannequins day in, day out. They were able to talk to the patient, and the patient talked back using pre-recorded responses that were activated by a teacher moderator. And they were able to communicate with the husband or the wife or the partner and provide compassion and empathy. And the faculty member loved it because the analytics gave her everything she needed to do most of the evaluation, and she could focus on the soft skills and give the students feedback in the debriefing about the communication skills, which is great. The other one we use, which is what this image is from, is PCS Spark, which also uses voice recognition and artificial intelligence, where you talk to a patient and you take a history, and the analytics provides you feedback on everything you said, everything the AI said in response, and what you missed. So if you forgot to ask about allergies, or if you forgot to ask how severe the pain is on a scale of 1 to 10, it would give you that information. Our veterinary technician program, this one was not so successful, but it's a great application. So students were able to dissect animals in VR, and you might imagine that it's not easy to find 60 dead cats to dissect in a vet tech program. And so they're able to dissect cats and dogs and other animals. We also got a bovine and canine anatomy program from Virginia Tech University, which is open source. It's available on GitHub. You can get it now. And but the downside to this program, it doesn't come with analytics. So it's very difficult for the teacher to use it for either formative or summative assessments. So that's the one thing it's missing. But what we did was we put 10 headsets in the library at that particular campus, and students can come in and borrow them. Just a little bit on skills acquisition. I thought a follow-up to the animal dissection. This was a small study that was done about 3 years ago, taking second-year medical students. It was a randomized controlled trial. They were taught a surgical procedure that involved putting a pin in the tibia, and they were divided into either a standard group where they learned from lecture, videos, notes, images, and the second group was randomized to virtual reality training. And they found that the percentage of steps done correctly in VR versus standard was 63% versus 25%, and the knowledge retention of the surgical instruments in VR was 50% versus 11%. Small study, but pretty impressive proof of concept. Our events management students, we're learning how to create and organize events in virtual reality. Our tourism students are going to be using VR this fall. We've been exploring soft skills using body swaps and for things like conflict resolution, interviewing skills, culturally biasing, a few other things. I think this is going to be very big in human resources and just addressing things that are very difficult to teach in the affective domain. As you know, it's very difficult to change attitudes and values, but when you can have an embodied experience, it's very powerful. Our biotech degree is going to be piloting a program called Nanome this summer. It's sort of a molecular chemistry, molecular biology program. Nanome is used by scientists from around the world to look at novel viruses, like the SARS-CoV-2 virus, for example. It was also used partly to develop the mRNA vaccines, where one of the superpowers of virtual reality is the ability to have infinite scalability, where you can convert the the microscopic to the macroscopic. What's particularly cool, we're going to be using the Quest Pro for this, and a student can sit here and look at a spike protein, and then with a thumbstick, move it to someone at the back of the classroom, and they can take it over and take a look at it. It's pretty amazing. And you can do quizzes in virtual reality. We co-developed with 7 other colleges and a company in Ontario, boiler plant simulation for our power engineering students. And so students can go in the boiler plant and learn how to fire up a boiler plant. They can also do scenarios that would otherwise be dangerous in the real world. Now they have a real simulator, but they learn the basics in here. They learn, what valves to turn, what levers to open or to close. They look at water gauges and temperature gauges, etc. So we have at our Owen Sound campus one of the largest ship deck simulators in the world. It's the largest in Canada. It's a massive deck with wraparound video, and students come from all over the world, and they finish their last 4 to 8 weeks of training learning how to pilot tanker ships and cruise ships. And now we're supplementing that with virtual reality starting this May, where ship captains from our college will be training pilots around the world, only we'll be shipping headset and computer to shipping companies. They will set it up, and our instructors will be with them at a distance. And I can tell you, when we first looked at this, so we have a ship captain who lives in Seattle, and he teaches at Georgian College, and he proposed this idea. And I met with 3 ship captains at our Owen Sound campus, one of whom, I think he was the lead ship captain instructor there. He was pretty skeptical about this. And he said to me, I'll be honest with you, Rob, I don't think I'm going to like this. I just don't think it's going to be great. He said, but these guys are here, and I'm going to try it. And I said, look, I have no idea what's involved in navigating a ship, so this could be crap. I don't know, but try it, see if you like it. So he put the headset on, he went onto the ship deck, he met with the guy from Seattle. The guy from Seattle showed him all the instruments and how you can manipulate them. And with the headset on, he was walking around. I know we can't say bad words, but he'd walk around, he'd say, holy F word. F word. F word. And he took the headset off and he said, Rob, that was not what I expected. That was something. That was something. And now he's the biggest advocate for it. So we're launching that program in May. I'm really excited about this one. Our fine arts department, they went through curriculum renewal, and they're going to be doing 3D art and sculpting in virtual reality. They purchased 40 headsets. They're going to be loaning the headset out to students who are going to keep it for a year. They're going to load some programs on there. They're creating their own accounts. We're going to take the headsets back after and factory reset them, deploy them to another group of students. Just a reminder, Victor Beer, and Lauren Beer too. Okay, Corey too. So really excited about that. And we're hosting an event this May where we're going to be having 30 VR stations in our gym, and we're going to cycle 800 grade 8 students through an open brush experience in virtual reality. So I don't know where I am for time, but I'm wrapping up. Okay, so our mental health and well-being group adopted VR. They purchased 8 headsets, and they held their first mindfulness session in VR 2 weeks ago, and Lauren was helping them out, and the reactions were, wow, this is so amazing. This is so amazing. And I actually learned about this concept from a physician by the name of Dr. Tim Colboat from Columbia, Missouri, who trains ER physicians, and in addition to using VR for medical training, he also uses it as part of a study where he takes residents who've been on the floor for 8 to 10 hours, and he brings them in to a small room. They fill out an Oxford University psychometric quiz. They go into VR for 5 minutes of meditation, and then they come out and fill out another quiz. And the feedback he's gotten from his ER residents is they feel completely refreshed after just 5 minutes. Now, he's also, to his credit, he set up lawn chairs in the room and fake tiki drinks and lamps lamps with artificial sunlight. I can't wait to go to this Emerge department. Incredible stuff. Anyway, really very excited about that. On our radar, we're looking at VR for police de-escalation, but also de-escalation training for nurses, paramedics, et cetera, because we all deal with that sort of thing. And we're looking at a program called FLAME, which is a really interesting mixed reality program for pre-service fire, where instead of a controller, you have this very heavy hose, and it's attached, or a very heavy nozzle, which is attached to a hose which is tethered to the ground, and you have to pull on it, which apparently is hard because I had a sore shoulder after doing it. And you wear this haptic vest that heats up to as much as 100 degrees Fahrenheit as you get closer to the flames, and a breathing apparatus that measures your breathing rate and depth to see if you're in distress. And that self-contained breathing apparatus on his back is actually a computer, which is really cool. And you can simulate up to, I think it's 40 or 60 different fires, which you would never get to do in a pre-service fire program. So you can put out a fire for a high-rise apartment, a restaurant, an electric vehicle, et cetera. I waited until about 1 o'clock until they let me try it. And when I tried it, they gave me a fire on a transformer on a pole. And so I tried to put the fire out, but the electricity goes from the burning electrical unit to me and killed me. Now, in retrospect, that kind of made sense. But at the time, it was a little alarming, I must confess. And, you know, I come from a paramedic background, so I thought, oh, firefighter, paramedic thing, that's what's going on here. But, you know, I took my headset off and I said, really? This is what you do to your newbies? You kill them in the first 15 minutes? I'm traumatized now. Like, if I ever see a transformer fire, I'm going to be running as fast as my 63-year-old legs will carry me. But incredible haptics with something like this, really, really remarkable. So in terms of VR deployment, I'll just summarize really quickly, but Paulo Coelho once said, he's an author, he once said, sometimes we have to travel a great distance before we find what is near. And I think that's very true of educational technology. So I would say to you, create a peer learning network, people who have some experience with VR, be it for nursing or trades or firefighting or policing, et cetera, and learn from each other. That's what I do. So if you ever want to reach out to me via LinkedIn, et cetera, feel free to do so, because I think that's how we learn as a community. But for me, my approach was find a compelling use case, pilot it, maybe research it, look at integration, what's the return on investment for doing that. You can do this with XR labs, particularly for VR experiences that address a small number of learning outcomes. Distance learning or loans, and that can be from a library, from a lab, or from a department area. I'll just end off with this, that recently our interior design degree teacher reached out and said, do you know of anything in interior design that we could use in VR? And I said no, but I knew someone who knew. So I reached out to another college and spoke to a colleague who was doing this sort of thing. And he was nice enough to come to our college, and we put headsets on all of the students and the teacher and let them play with an application. And at the end of the event, two students went straight to Best Buy and got a couple of headsets, which is what happens, right? It's kind of the gateway to the metaverse, if you will. So there's simple ways to do this, but my advice is find compelling experiences. If you're not developing in-house, pilot them with small groups. I think that's a fiscally responsible way to do it, and see what works, and get VR into the hands of as many teachers and students as possible. So with that, I think that's my last slide. Thank you, and hope I didn't go too far over.